very much for that great welcome. Thank you all very much. What a great honor. What a great honor to be here with you. Thank you for that warm reception. I'm so flattered to have the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I figured you might need a break from all these guys running from president. So I thought, on that front, I do have some exciting breaking news. I just got a call from the governor of New Jersey, just got off the phone with Chris Christie. Happy to announce here first, he is still not running for president of the United States. It's a funny thing, all these presidential candidates, they come up here, they want you to like them, they want you to clap for them, they want your approval, they want your support. As for me, I don't want or need anything from you except for those of you that are from Louisiana. In about 2 weeks, I'll be running for re-election, so if you could just remember to vote, that would be great. Go, show up. Before I start, I do want to thank my friend from Louisiana, Tony Perkins. Hasn't he done a great job here at FRC? And I could take my entire time telling you, Tony Perkins is the real deal. I've known Tony for many, many years before he became such a celebrated national leader. I remember when he authored Louisiana's covenant marriage law. Supriya and I were proud to be one of the first couples to get a covenant marriage license thanks to his law. I remember Tony was one of the first people, and I've got to tell you this story real quickly, one of the first people that stood with me the first time I ever ran for elected office. Now, I was polling at about 2%. The margin of error in the poll was 2%. So I was, I might have been at zero at that point. Later, after I'd actually after run for a couple of different offices, I remember later in my political career, there was another legislator that had actually endorsed one of my opponents, worked hard for him, gone out of his way to be against me, came to me and found me after I won. He said, "Bobby, I was secretly for you from the very first day." I said, "I don't even know what that means." I said, "Next time, I want you to be publicly for me, be secretly for the other guy. I'd rather you do it that way." The great thing about Tony, what you see is what you get. He stands up for the same values in private as in public. He's doing a great job at FRC. Let's give another round of applause for his leadership. Whenever I get a chance to speak to a national group, one of the first things I've got to do as the governor of the great state of Louisiana, a state that, by the way, has been through now Hurricanes Katrina, Rita, Gustav, Ike, an oil spill. We've been through a drought. We've been through a flood. We've been through fires. The Old Testament talked about 10 plagues. We're just waiting for the locust. That's about all that's left to come to Louisiana. But as a state that's been through all those things, people always ask me, is Louisiana going to be okay? And I'm here to tell you, we're going to come back better and stronger than we were before those hurricanes and before that spill. But I'm also here to say thank you. I'm here to thank the great people of this very generous country who continue to help us to rebuild. We have seen church groups, we've seen faith-based organizations, we've seen schools, civic clubs continue to this day to send school supplies, to come down on spring breaks, to come on summer missionary trips, to help people rebuild their homes, to rebuild churches, to rebuild community buildings. And I tell you, it says something great about America. America is a place where people will, on their own, without coercion, without prompting, without prodding, give and make sacrifices for complete strangers they've never met, just because those strangers are their fellow countrymen. This says something special about America. It says something special about America's culture. It appears this notion that we should love our neighbors as much as we love ourselves is alive and well in America today. So on behalf of the great people of Louisiana, thank you for your generosity. Thank you for your continued support. Now let me start off my speech by telling you, I didn't come here to talk about politics tonight. If you came for a political speech, you may leave disappointed. But I'd also add this. After all the political speeches you've already heard tonight and you're going to hear this weekend, after about 1 million presidential debates that have already taken place, if you really just want another political speech, it may be time to consider a recovery program. I mean, enough is enough. Here's what I want to talk to you about tonight. The title of my speech, it's The Culture, Stupid. You may remember there was another famous Louisianian, James Carville, in 1992 came up with this great phrase, it's the economy, stupid. It helped to elect a president, Bill Clinton. As a piece of political strategy, it was brilliant. It was brilliant then. It's probably even more applicable today. Our economy is at an all-time low, worst recession since the Great Depression. We got a president with no idea in the world what to do, how to solve the economic challenges facing our country. This would be a perfect time for a campaign centered on the economy, on fiscal issues, on jobs. I suspect every political strategist that you survey would agree that if they will tell you right now, if you as a candidate, if you are talking about anything other than economic issues, you are wasting your time. And by the way, they're probably right. From a strategic standpoint, they're probably right. But this is where it comes in handy, the fact that I'm not running for president. I don't care one whit about what the polls say, about what the pundits say, about what the political strategists say. I'm going to talk about the status of American culture because I think that truly is important. I'm going to make the case that as America's culture goes, so goes America. I'm going to make the case that even issues such as unemployment, insane levels of debt, irrational government spending, runaway deficits, absurd bailout programs, all important issues. All of them are details and byproducts of a much larger cultural concern. And that's the case I want to make tonight. I believe that our economy is in the end a reflection of, a byproduct of our culture, or it's the culture, stupid. I'm going to break my comments into two parts. First, I want to talk about a specific cultural issue we've been working on in Louisiana, and an issue that is important to me personally as governor, but also as a husband and as a father of three great young children, an issue that I think is essential for America. And then after that, I want to share with you a thought about why culture even matters in the first place, where culture fits in the hierarchy of what America is really about. Let me start by saying I suppose all of us are to some extent a creation of, a reflection of our own circumstances at any given stage of life. Truly, I'm a reflection of my parents. I want to tell you just real quickly their story. My parents came to Louisiana so my mom could attend to LSU. She was pregnant with me at the time. My dad had such confidence in the American dream, he picked up the yellow pages and called company after company until he could get a job. Now, they had health insurance, but when my mom went to the hospital to deliver me, she discovered I was something they called a pre-existing condition. Now, just so you don't make a mistake, they were married when they conceived me. I'm not saying, I just predated their insurance coverage, not the marriage. Back in those days, it was simpler, though. My dad literally shook hands with the doctor and promised to pay him on a monthly basis. There were no paperwork, no forms. Years later, when I would have the first of my own children, my wife gave birth to the first of our own children at that same hospital, it would take hours to fill out all the paperwork, even though we've got good insurance. But I've always asked my dad, how do you pay for a baby on installment? I mean, what happens if you miss a payment? Are they going to take the baby back? I mean, what do they do if you don't pay? He said, son, look, if they would have taken you back, I would have skipped a payment just to send you back. You were a lot of trouble growing up. My dad is a great American success story. You've all heard these kinds of stories. 1 in 9 children. Grew up in a home without running water, without electricity. Was the only one in the family to get past the 5th grade. I know because I've heard these stories every single day of my life. If I asked him for an allowance, I got a lecture about how lucky I was. Apparently, he had to walk uphill to get to school, uphill to get home from school as well. Thank God he's a grandfather. There's some gene that gets turned off when you become a grandfather. Stricter he was with us, the more lenient he is to his grandchildren. But growing up every single day, I had to hear not only these stories, but I also had to hear him tell us how lucky we were to be Americans, how lucky we were to live in this great country. You know, I never really understood that as a child. It's kind of like when your parents tell you, eat your vegetables. My parents used to tell me, eat your vegetables. There's starving children in China. I used to remember thinking, well, they can have my vegetables. I don't want them. You know, let's mail them. What does it have to do with me? But now I'm a husband. Now I'm a father. Got 3 great young children at home. And I'm beginning to understand a little bit more about what my father was trying to teach me, what he was trying to make sure that I understood. My kids, like I said, are 9, 7, and 5. Oh, in addition to being a father and a husband, I've got a day job. It takes me out of the house. I've got some friends. And I apologize in advance to the Florida Gator fans out there, but I'm a big LSU Tiger fan. But the reality is my wife and my children are my number one priority. And I think that's the way that not only I look at it, I think it all starts with family. I think it builds from there, and I suspect that's true for a lot of us gathered here today. So over the past few years, first as a congressman, as a candidate for governor, and now as governor of the great state of Louisiana, I've spent a great deal of time and effort focused on the question of what is it that government can do to strengthen and bolster families. Now, of course, in the end, strong families are not created by government. Thank goodness for that. But as a parent of young children, I can tell you this: we need all the help we can to raise our children in this culture. And let me put this thesis on the table for your consideration. For all of our advances as a society, for all of our tremendous successes, for all of our great technological innovations, in many ways, our culture in recent years has been in a state of deterioration, not improvement. Now, I want to be clear, I'm not a glass half empty kind of guy. I'm an optimist by nature. In some ways, I've been accused of being too optimistic. I'm completely optimistic about the future of America. I think our best days are ahead of us, not behind us. But I'm also a realist. As a parent, I'm aware there's an overall coarsening of our culture in many ways. The general public discourse has too often become coarse, and I think an overwhelming number of parents, be they Republicans, Independents, Democrats, understand and would agree with this sentiment. We see a coarsening of our culture in the arts, in music, in television, on the big screen, on the internet, even on the cell phone. And those of you that have young children know exactly what I'm talking about. We're in the communications age, the technology age. In many ways, it is a fantastic age, and we should embrace it. And it is amazing to me how quickly technology changes. When we moved into the governor's mansion, my little girl was 6 years old. And I remember I was feeding her brothers one day, and she went off to my computer. She wanted to go watch a cartoon on my computer. A couple of minutes later, I hear her calling for me saying, "Daddy, why is Mickey Mouse speaking to me in Spanish?" And I went over there, and just in a couple of minutes, she had gotten bored with Dora, had known to go on Google to search for Mickey Mouse, had known to go to YouTube to launch the Mickey Mouse cartoon, but hadn't realized the first cartoon that came up wasn't necessarily a Walt Disney cartoon. And those of you that raise children know how quickly they're adapting to this new technology. You also realize how they take it for granted. I was trying to explain to my little girl, she's so used to pausing TV shows, rewinding them, and recording them. I had to explain to her, look, when I was growing up, there were all about 3 channels. And I was Poppy's remote control. I had to go up there. I mean, I remember the days when you would turn that UHF dial, and when you got the clear picture, Dad would say, "Now don't move, stay right there." And you would just stand there while he watched the evening news. My little girl couldn't believe this. She turns to my mom and says, "Grandma, did they have remote controls when you were a little girl?" My mom says, "Sweetheart, they didn't have TV when I was a little girl." My little girl's eyes got so big. But you know, with this great technology, we've also had a coarsening of our culture. Try to find the family hour on network TV. Try to take your children to a movie without having to cover their eyes or cover their ears so often because of the language or what they might see. We've got to admit, with these advances come considerable challenges that previous generation of parents didn't face. Our kids today are bombarded from every angle at every moment with a constant and steady stream of communication that is far too often sordid, coarse, and not age appropriate. By the way, I think there's a lot of garbage in our culture that's not appropriate for any age, not even just our children's. So what does this have to do with governing, you might ask? Am I advocating a crackdown on free speech? Am I advocating government censorship? Not at all. But this is what we have done and are doing in Louisiana. We are focusing our efforts on doing everything we can to protect our children, and I mean everything. In my campaign, I espoused a tough platform for how we're going to deal with those who dare to attempt to prey on our children. You know, as governor, you get to meet a lot of great people. It's amazing. You get to meet athletes, you get to meet working people, you get to meet families. I want to tell you about one of the most amazing young little boys that I met. Made such an impression on me. It was one of my first several months in office, and this young boy came to see me in my office. His parents had taken him out of school that day. He had missed a whole day of school. Got to go to see the baseball stadium where the Tigers play. He's a big baseball fan. Little elementary school boy, and he got to come to the Louisiana State Capitol. Put on his best coat. He had been scrubbed to within an inch of his life. He was so clean. Look, I got little boys. I put them in the bath. They come out dirtier than when they started. I don't know how they do it. It's like they don't touch the water. I don't know how they do it. You could tell his parents had told him, you better say yes, sir, and no, sir, and yes, ma'am, and no, and you better behave because you're going to the state capitol. And you're going to meet senators and representatives. And as a special treat, they brought him to see me. You see, this poor little boy, his parents had sent him to school assuming he'd be safe in his elementary school. A monster had taken advantage of his innocence at that school. This little boy was brave enough to come home and tell his parents about it. They ended up arresting and convicting that monster. Turns out he had harmed many other children before that. Well, this little boy came to see me, and his father and his mom were so proud. And the reason they wanted him to come see me, afterwards, the mom and the little boy left, the dad stayed behind. He said, Governor, we just wanted you to tell our little boy that he didn't do anything wrong. He thought he had done something wrong. And so we thought, if the governor of his state, who he sees on TV, told him he had done nothing wrong, it might mean something to him. And this man, he didn't look like the kind of man that gets emotional very often. He was a tough man, a big man. He looked at me and said, look, Governor, my little boy wakes up in the middle of the night crying, wondering if he did something wrong, if he was to blame. He said, Governor, I wake up in the middle of the night, sometimes crying, wondering if I did something wrong, if there was something more I could or should have done to protect my little boy. I couldn't undo what had happened to that father's son, to that little boy. But what I did say to that father, and I made a promise to him, I said, sir, I promise you, we will do everything we can in the state of Louisiana to protect our children from these monsters. We are going to have the toughest laws to stop this from happening, to crack down on these monsters so this doesn't happen to other little boys and girls in our state. And I could read you a bunch of laws. We've doubled the penalties for internet sex predators. We've arrested a record number of people involved in child pornography. We require lifetime registration for sex offenders. We've increased the area where sex offenders are prohibited from areas like schools, buses, daycare facilities, playgrounds, youth centers, pools, parks, video arcades. We double the penalty for the unlawful presence of a sex offender. Increase the sentence for computer-aided solicitation of a minor. Increase the minimum sentence for molestation of a juvenile. We've connected Facebook and MySpace to our sex predator database to keep these monsters off their websites. We've closed a loophole that allowed our sex offenders to go and use email and electronic communications to contact our children. We increased the time that Louisiana authorities can jail suspects, prohibited sex offenders from wearing disguises, giving candy at Halloween. We even allowed the chemical castration of certain offenders on their first offense and required it on their second offense. We consolidated our databases. Consolidate our databases so sheriffs, police, local law officials can share information online. We've required employers to check this database. Indeed, we passed a law this past session, bipartisan bill, to say we're going to keep these convicted sex offenders out of the chat rooms. The ACLU is suing me. They said, we don't think the governor's worried, properly concerned with the constitutional rights of sex offenders. I said, that's exactly right. I'm more worried about the rights of the children, not the offenders. I'm still outraged. The United States Supreme Court threw out Louisiana's death penalty for those monsters that rape and attack our children in a 5-4 case. And here's what offends me the most. As part of the rationale, they said there was a growing national consensus against the use of the death penalty in these types of cases. Now, I've got two problems with that. I'm no attorney, but I did take civics when I was a child. I thought the job of the Supreme Court was to apply the Constitution. I missed the part in the Constitution where the Supreme Court was supposed to become a Gallup polling organization. When was it their job to come and tell us what the national polls say? But apparently in my civics class textbook, it didn't also talk about international precedents either, so that just must not have been in my civics class. I must have missed that section. But the second thing that offends me is I'd like them to come and explain to the young child in that case, who is now an adult, who was attacked in the case they ruled on. That little girl, by the way, was so severely hurt, she will never be able to have children as an adult. And I won't share with you the graphic and horrible details of her case, but certainly this was a case that cried out for the death penalty. And I know there may be some here that are against the death penalty. You may see it as antithetical to your faith, and I respect that. But that's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making is the United States Supreme Court should not be making decisions based on opinion polls. They should be applying the original intent of the Constitution. I have promised our people in Louisiana we're going to have the strictest laws, the stiffest penalties, the swiftest justice when it comes to dealing with those who prey on our children. You know, some people get so excited because you can go online and see where these monsters live block by block in your neighborhood. That doesn't impress me. I'll be impressed when you can go online and see that all of these monsters live in one place, in Angola, our biggest state penitentiary in the state of Louisiana. As a parent, I can't control what comes out of Hollywood. I can't control what the networks put on TV. I can't control all the garbage on the internet. But I can control, at least while my children are young, what they watch, what they hear, and what they read. Now, as governor, I can't censor anything. I can't take anybody's freedom of speech, and I wouldn't want to, even if I could. America is the land of the free and must forever remain so. But what I can do as governor is this. I can make Louisiana the last place that anyone wants to be caught in any way harming a child or even exposing children to inappropriate material. I can make Louisiana a dangerous place for Congressman Weiner to relocate to, in other words. I look at it this way. Everybody has a different way in which they can contribute to making our families and our culture stronger. Many of you are involved with ministries that help people create stronger families, build healthier relationships, stronger churches, and stronger communities. Those are tremendous things that make our culture stronger. Those efforts are the backbone of American culture. Those of you involved in such pursuits are working on the positive reinforcement side of this equation. In the meantime, there needs to be somebody else working on the other side of the fence, working on the negative reinforcement side. In the state of Louisiana right now, that's where I come in. When I ran for governor in 2007 and in this year, I've had the support of our statewide Sheriff's Association. That's significant as most of the sheriffs in Louisiana are Democrats. But one of the things that we agree upon is that we would mount an effort to combat and attack anybody who in any way attempts to harm or exploit the children of our state. We're not just interested in stopping these predators. We want to crush them and make them extinct. We want to make Louisiana the safest place in the country to raise a family. We've got a good ways to go, but we're making progress. We're bent on success. Now, at this point in my talk, you may be wondering, what is this guy talking about? Doesn't he realize our economy is in shambles? We've got a president and Congress that have borrowed $15 trillion and are digging this hole even deeper in debt. Why is he talking about a side issue instead of focusing on the economy? I'm here to tell you this is not a side issue. The bottom line is this: we all need to take responsibility for the health of the culture of our nation. In my view, the very first place we must do this is by protecting the children of America. A society that fails to protect its children eventually ceases to be a civilized society. And that brings me now to my second part of my talk. I'd like to turn my attention to the question of why culture matters. And where does culture fit in the hierarchy of our needs as a country? In the context of political campaigns, we've become accustomed to dividing people's interests and concerns into neat little categories. You hear pollsters and the pundits talk about foreign policy issues, defense and military issues, economic issues, moral issues, social welfare issues, and so on. They try to describe us as either social conservatives or fiscal conservatives. In my view, that's not how real life works. I'd argue that all of these are interconnected, they're all tied together, and the health of our country is completely dependent on the overall health of America's culture. Culture is not merely the social issues or the moral issues the pollsters and the campaign pundits talk about. Culture is far more than that. I'm here to say some pretty surprising things. The beauty, and I'll start with this, the beauty and promise of America do not lie in our economic system. The beauty of America is not our political system. Great as democracy is, that's not it. The beauty of America is not our military superiority, handy as that is. The beauty of America is not our flowing rivers, our glorious mountains, even the gorgeous coast of Louisiana. The beauty of America is our culture. Our culture is the glue that keeps us together, the engine that makes the American dream possible. Let me make my case. First, I said the beauty of America is not our economic system. Don't get me wrong. I'm a complete proponent of the free enterprise system, an unapologetic proponent of American capitalism. I've got an Adam Smith tie at home. I've spoken at the Heritage Foundation. I read the Wall Street Journal, the National Review, the Weekly Standard, all of them. In Louisiana, we are seeing unprecedented economic growth despite the national recession. Capitalism and conservative economic policies are alive and well in America, working right now in Louisiana. Unlike the federal government, we've actually cut spending in Louisiana 26%. We've got the fewest number of state employees we've had in over 20 years. The American credit rating is going down. Our credit ratings are higher than they've been in 25 years. Our unemployment has been below the Southern average every month I've been governor. For 3 years in a row, Southern Business Development has ranked us the #1 state in the South, and Site Selection Polina ranked us the most improved states in the country. And after 25 years of losing our children for the last 4 years in a row, more people have moved into Louisiana rather than leave our state. We're not just talking about fiscal responsibility, we're doing it. We enacted the largest income tax cut in our state's history, and I've made a promise. As long as I'm governor, we're not raising taxes in the state of Louisiana, period. But I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't give you a plug nickel for capitalism and free enterprise in a country where people don't play by the rules. People don't have respect for the rule of law. People don't share a common view of the dignity of all mankind as God's creation, and people don't care for one another. Capitalism in such a society will in the end fail to deliver for our people. And guess what? We have just witnessed a little taste of that. This meltdown we've experienced as a country was in part brought on by unchecked greed. Maybe you've read this. I read somewhere once that the love of money is the root of all evil. You know, people on Wall Street, let's see how we got into this mess. People on Wall Street invented financial schemes and products to sell and trade back and forth to each other, products that were specious from the start. But let's not stop there. Banks made loans to people they knew couldn't afford them. But let's not stop there. The politicians encouraged and sometimes even coerced banks to make loans they knew were fraught with peril. But let's not stop there. Consumers borrowed money they knew they'd have a hard time repaying. Now, to be clear, I believe that our country can climb any hill, and we will climb out of this ditch we're currently in. But at the root of this current crisis, there is an element of unchecked avarice, and we must face that fact. Predictably, some are calling on the government to make a bunch of laws to ensure this won't happen again. Well, good luck with that. Our wonderful free enterprise system works best when it can rely on the bedrock foundation of a culture where people share a common commitment to do the right thing. People understand that you can't serve both God and mammon. Take away that common commitment, and we would quickly devolve into a survival of the fittest mentality. The second thing I said the beauty of America is not our political system. You know, I love Winston Churchill. He said many memorable things. One of the things he said about democracy, he said it's the worst form of government except all the alternatives. He also said you can count on the Americans to do the right thing after they've tried everything else. Look, we're taught at an early age in civics that democracy is the greatest thing ever, that it's the greatest thing in the world. Well, there is an element of truth to that. It beats dictatorship, communism, fascism, and anarchy, but still, democracy is nothing more than allowing people to govern themselves. For people to thrive, democracy only works as long as the people share a common commitment to doing what is right, to respect for all, to core values, to doing unto others as you would have them to do unto you, to selflessness, to peace, patience, kindness, and self-control. Perhaps some of you recognize a few of those phrases from another ancient manuscript. I wouldn't give you a plug nickel for a democracy in a place where the collective intentions of the governed were bent on selfishness, on greed, on malice, on lawlessness, on coercion, or on subjugating others. So our system of government works great and works best when it can rely on the bedrock foundation of a culture where people share a common commitment to doing the right thing. Without that, even a democracy would simply become the will of the mob. I also said the beauty of America is not our military superiority, though that certainly comes in handy. Make no mistake, we live in a dangerous world. Phil Graham once said that if the lion and the lamb are going to lie down together, I'd just as soon that America be the lion. I'd like to second that sentiment, but I'd also like to note the lion and the lamb are not likely to lie down together in this lifetime. America is the light of the world. It is time the left in this country recognized that and admitted that. I'm sick and tired of hearing people pretend otherwise or making apologies or excuses for America. America is not just another nation in the family of nations. America and the American dream is special and the hope of free peoples across the planet. And our military must remain strong. Not just strong, it must remain the strongest. We shouldn't have any shame in keeping that objective. We should be proud of it. But I wouldn't give you a plug nickel for a strong military in a country whose objective was conquest and domination of other societies. So having military superiority is great, but it is only great when we can rely on the bedrock foundation of a culture where people share a common commitment to doing the right thing. Without that, we would be no better than the old Soviet Union. American capitalism is great, American democracy is great, and American military power is great. I'm committed to preserving all three. But the success of America does not rely fundamentally on these things. The success of America and the realization of the American dream rely on our common sense of culture. A culture that admits some things are right and some things are wrong. A culture that respects and honors the dignity of the individual. And a culture that honors the value of our Judeo-Christian ethic. You've heard it said that America is good because its people are good. If Americans cease to be good, America will cease to be great. This is something we have to come to grips with as a people. There is no magic to the free enterprise system or to our democracy or to our mighty military that cannot be undone by men behaving badly. Simply put, our culture matters. Our culture is crucial to our success as a nation. Our culture is not merely a luxury item that we could do without. You've also heard it said that liberty cannot be established without morality, nor morality without faith. This is, of course, an unfashionable statement or sentiment in today's society. Many want us to believe that a completely secular society is a desirable goal for America. Many want to believe that capitalism, democracy, and military might will secure American success and prosperity regardless of the health of our culture. I disagree with that completely. I think we believe that at our own peril. I suggest to you this is largely the view that the countries of Western Europe have adopted over the past century. I have no interest in seeing America go the way of Europe. I've been privileged to see some of the most beautiful churches ever built throughout Europe. Sadly, too many of those churches sit as empty as museums. In my home state of Louisiana, I have seen great people come together to worship in abandoned Walmarts and empty storefronts. And I'm here to tell you, I'd rather be where the gospel is being preached, where the Holy Spirit is, than in those big, beautiful, empty buildings. For me, I believe it's the culture, stupid. I rest my case, and may God continue to bless each and every one of us. We have a sacred duty and a sacred obligation. My father was right about the American dream. We've got an obligation to leave more to our children than we inherited from our parents. I want to thank you for being on the front lines to defend our culture and to pass along to our children the opportunity to pursue their dreams in the greatest country in the history of the world. May God continue to bless these United States of America, the greatest country in the history of our world. God bless y'all, and thank y'all for allowing me to be here with y'all tonight.